So this video is going to be very high level, and it's kind of an appetizer before a longer video that I'll do on the high-low training model. This is a lot of it's going to be coming from Charlie Francis, all right, and his work with the high-low model from his Charlie Francis training system. This is also going to be heavily influenced from Strength Coach Network webinars from Mike Tucker, and that's on microdosing. So go inside, go to the members homepage. From the members homepage, click on view the entire members homepage. Click on webinar library. At the top, click search, and then type in Tucker, and then you'll be able to see his microdosing. It's Mike Tucker and Sean Doherty, technically, and they talked about how they microdosed the Villanova football team during spring football. Villanova football has been a top 10 perennial team in FCS for a while. This is also going to be heavily influenced on Nick DeMarco's webinar on morphocycle design. Same thing. Search DeMarco or Morpho, and this will come up, and this will lay it all out for you. So understanding the high-low training model, the whole point of this is we're trying to keep the high days high. Oh, that's terrible. I will get a better cleaner than that. All right, we're going to talk about keeping the high days high. All right, high and the low days low. Now, this really only works when you have a sport coach that actually will do this, because our job as strength coaches is to make sure that the athletes are prepared for what happens at practice. I talked about it in my ACL webinar. So the ACL webinar 5-1. In that webinar, I talked about the year where I had Towson football had 5 ACL tears in 1 year, and how that year helped me learn, and eventually we had less than 1 a year, but after that 1 year. And what I talked about in this presentation, and you can watch that again inside the member library, a 20% delta is what I liked to always have. So if I knew that the players were going to be doing, 5,000 yards of work, and they'd have 200 yards of high-speed distance and 50 explosive efforts. Because for me, when I was looking at practice, I wanted to have a volume metric. So volume is either going to be your GPS, or it's going to be your player load, whatever IMU you're using from whatever company. Then your intensity. So intensity to me was these two metrics, because it's high speed running, and this was change in directions. That explosive efforts, as I talked about in that webinar, was all the high accel plus high decel plus COD right and left. So all those high explosive stuff, I wanted to have a 20% delta, making sure that I knew that they were doing more than that, and then my density would just be player load per minute. So if I wanted a 20% more, that meant at one point their volume they would do 1 day, that was at least 6,000. For high speed running, they would do at least 240 high speed yards. Here, they would do at least 60 CODs. In this way, they had at least 20. That's on 1 day. I would then make sure that they were able to repeat whatever a week looked like from volume, intensity, and density, and then make sure they've done that for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and done it for 4 weeks before they go into camp. Now, how does all this play into high day high, low day low? We have to prepare the athlete for practice. So if your coach is going to have a hard day, a hard day, a hard day, a low day, and a hard day, let's just call this your normal week. So here's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Off Sunday, off Saturday, typical Monday through Friday training session. Well, you can't do high-low training session if this is what the coach is going to provide. You have to be making sure that the athletes are prepared for what the coach is going to do. So if coach is doing this, but you go high, low, high, low, high, low, first of all, the athletes aren't prepared for this because they're getting a low day after a high day, but that's not going to happen except for here. So they're not technically prepared for this Tuesday because they had a low day here instead of a high day when they needed it. They also aren't prepared because they only have 3 high days, yet they're going to be expected to do 4. So you're doing your athletes a disservice. What you need to do is you need to make sure that you're working with the sport coach to get them to want to do a high day high, low day low. Maybe they're not going to always be able to do high day high, low day low. Maybe they go high, low, high, high, low. Fine. You just have to find out what the sport coach is going to do so you can reverse engineer it. And that's the conversation you have to have with the coach. Hey, coach, I want to know what you're going to do, not because I'm trying to tell you what to do, because I want to work with you. I'm a support staff member. What practice plan, what design do you want to do? Let's keep all the stressors the same. Let's keep the high days high and the low days low. Within the high days, this is where you're going to do really hard central nervous system task movements. So your sprints, your lower body typically lifts because that's going to place a greater central nervous system demand. You're going to be tapping into the type 2 muscle fibers, more central nervous system fatigue. And just think about it. You're going to lift more weight when you do a back squat than when you do a bench press. You're using more muscles. It's more tiring. And this is where you're going to do probably your hard CODs. All right, all these efforts in the Charlie Francis world is going to be, he would say 95% higher. Realistically, in team sports, you're looking at 80% or higher. All right, he says get rid of the middle zone. You can't get rid of the middle zone because that's where your athletes are going to be living when you're looking at your GPS data anyways. So, pairing the high days high with the low days low, making sure, all right, if this is a high day and they're going to practice and you're going to lift them, keep practice the main thing. So maybe you lift them after practice, but it's a really hard day at practice. And you might do some sprints before practice, and the distance of the sprints will be dependent upon what's going on. So let's say that this example could work with basketball, this could work with football, this could work with soccer, lacrosse. If I have the field broken up vertically, all right, versus the field broken up horizontal. Now, a lot of this comes from Cam Joss and Fergus from their book, The Process. But this also, before that, came from Isserin in block periodization. Isserin has a block periodization presentation inside Strength Coach Network. It's also a great book for you to read. Joseph Johnson has books on it from Ultimate Athlete Concepts. So this idea of breaking the field up horizontal and vertical and then keeping all the stressors the same. So if on this we're going to do a vertical emphasis day. So in soccer, basketball, football, lacrosse, whatever, we're going up and down the full field. So you're talking with the coach, hey, let's do really, really hard things this day. Let's really, really sprint. Let's cover distance. Let's make this really, really hard. And then on the low day, now you're not doing full cover drills. On the low day, it's mainly upper body lifting. It's auxiliary lifts because these auxiliary lifts aren't going to be as taxing on your nervous system because they're not going to be lifting as much weight. It's going to be easier for your body to lift. If you look at the Henneman size principle, where it talks about motor units are boring or lazy, they're going to let you tap into the easier lower threshold motor units, those type 1 muscle fibers. So that's what you're going to be doing on this low day. Pay attention that you're not overly smashing their posterior chain because yes, your Nordics, your leg curls, the eccentric, isometric, whatever type of posterior chain work, whether it's hip dominant, knee dominant, bilateral, unilateral for either. Yes, it's auxiliary and it's lower thresholds, but you probably want to put that on your high day because the posterior chain is going to get taxed on this Monday. We don't want to tax post chain with sprints and lower body lifting. Then because it's technically an auxiliary lift, doing it on Tuesday, maybe again on the other low day. Now they never have a time for their lower body and their posterior chain to recover. So that's how you would then break off the low day. So it's an upper body, easier lift. Now you're talking with the coach. Hey, maybe we're just doing walkthrough, situational things that are easier. So that way the next day we can smash them and do a really, really hard day again. This hard day could be vertical emphasis or it could be horizontal emphasis. And you're telling the coach, hey, there's more side-to-side running, more change in direction here. Sport of football, rugby, lacrosse, maybe that's a more higher contact day. You're still doing V's, sprints, lower body lifts, looking at whatever metrics you want to be hitting at. And that's how you go about this high-low training stimulus, working with the sport coach. making sure you're stacking days, which then lead to weeks, which leads to a week, which leads to weeks, adding the S, and then ultimately the months. So this is a super high level understanding of the high-low training model and then how to work with sport coaches. I will do a full deeper presentation inside Strength Coach Network, but I appreciate you understanding this. Thank you for watching.